Good evening everyone, welcome along. This is Space Dave Live, episode number 14. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. With us we also have a small but very hardy studio audience. Thank you guys for braving the bitter cold tonight and coming out with us. And in the background there we have Floyd, who is helping us out with all the usual social media, chat, technical issues and all of that kind of stuff. So let's get straight on with it, shall we? We'll have a look at our program and see what we've got on tonight. Now I didn't quite finish updating the program tonight, but here are some of the things that we need to talk about. So in the news, the NASA budget, just a little bit about that to be honest, not much. But we're going to be talking about a solar sail project, and I think probably the big one tonight that we will start off with is that New Zealand is getting to name its own planet, believe it or not. So I'm looking forward to talking about that one. In the night sky, we're going to talk about a couple of things there, including Matariki, because of course now is the time to be getting out and having a look at what's happening at Matariki in the morning. So let's see, before we get started, of course, we need to talk about the competition. So our competition tonight is actually related to that thing that I was just talking about, the New Zealand getting to name its own planet. So we're going to be talking about that in the news. So you might not want to answer this just yet, or you might want to get stuck straight into it. But the question is going to be, what should be the name of New Zealand's planet? So fairly straightforward, but as I say, you probably want to listen to what that's all about first of all. And remember, when you enter the competition, you write the word comp, :space, and then your entry. Well, it's not a whole word, isn't it? You write half the word there, you write comp, :space, and your entry. That means that when Floyd's looking through, trying to find which ones are competition entries, he knows what we're dealing with there. Okay, so that's the competition, and we'll get back to that very shortly. Let's just... What was that, sorry? Thank you so much, Alan. I do this every single week. I go through the competition and it's normally John who points out that you haven't told everyone what the prize is. So tonight I'm going to tell you what the prize is. It's this, oh, it's a bit hard to see, isn't it? This box of space goodies. It's sort of like a little collector's starters kit for space. It's not a huge amount of stuff in there, but it's quite a cool little prize, I think. Just trying to show it in a way that you can see it. So there's a few bits and pieces in there. It's a neat little prize and it would make an awesome gift, I think. So that's what you're in for tonight. So we can ship that anywhere in the world. So get amongst that. That is our prize tonight. So we were going to look at the little bit of housekeeping stuff that we've got to get through first of all. Now I should mention, of course, and do every week, that you can support the show by going to our Patreon page. You can see the link down there on the bottom. And that helps us keep the show up and running. We don't have anyone new to thank this week, so we won't get too upset about that, but we will take the chance to just show you the whole list of people who are supporting us at the moment. Thank you so much to all of those people who are helping to pay our bills. We really do appreciate that. Let's just keep moving along here. I wanted to make a quick point about the live chat and comments, especially on Facebook. So I've noticed that on Facebook, what seems to happen is that if you come in a little bit late, Facebook still tells you that you're live, but it's actually showing you a delayed stream. So if you're, like the time right now is just after 7, a couple of minutes after 7 o'clock. If it's a bit later than that, you're not actually quite watching it live, and that's leading to some confusion in the comments. And it may be that your comments aren't quite coming through when you think they should be, and that may be the reason. Also on Facebook and to some extent on YouTube, some of the comments aren't coming through straight away, which is a bit of a shame. But that may be why we're not quite getting all the comments as fast as we should. So we'll just keep an eye on that, but hopefully that will help a little bit. Now, there's another thing that we needed to talk about, and this was from last week. If you remember last week, the issue came up of the Fair Go story about the website that was ripping people off, selling them, well, taking money for telescopes, but not actually delivering. We weren't quite sure exactly what it was all about, although we did kind of get it all covered last week, thanks to you guys who helped out there. But I just wanted to clarify one thing, that the website in question is no longer active, so you don't need to worry about going online and making sure that you've got the right website. And I wanted to show you this one here because this did come up last week. This one is Telescopes New Zealand. This website is not in any way affiliated with the problematic website. So I actually rang these guys this afternoon and had a good chat to them. So these guys are all completely legit, so you can go here and buy with confidence. So the website that we are worried about, I can't think of the guy's name. Someone McTague, wasn't it? I've forgotten his name, sorry. But anyway, that story's got really interesting. He's going up on charges, not just for ripping people off on the telescopes, but all sorts of other really sordid stuff. So it's quite an interesting story, to say the least. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say about that. So we are happy that you are not going to get ripped off online. Now, a couple of other things. You'll notice on the contact details just below us here, we're actually going to can the email address that we had there. Before I do that, I know that there's still a few emails outstanding there that I haven't replied to. Sorry about that. I'm going to get onto that as soon as I can, but it wasn't really being used very much. And what we're going to try instead is actually Google Hangouts. Now, we haven't really tested this out, but I'm keen to give it a go if anyone wants to try. So if you want to call in to the show, you can theoretically, hopefully, call in live. All you've got to do is go into Google Hangouts and enter that email address there. And if I notice, a little alert will come up here and we can bring you onto the show live. So if you want to do that, just be aware that you really need to be using headphones, or that would be ideal at least, so that we don't get an audio loop. But if anyone's keen to try that, just go for your life. We'd love to have you in, and that's, we've sort of always planned to have that as part of the show, and of course that is leading towards having guest speakers on the show as well. So yeah, so we're really looking forward to doing that. So if anyone wants to help me out and give that a blast, you go for it. Right, I'm just going to quickly check the chats because I want to talk about that as well. So, hi everybody that's all here. You know the deal, I won't go through every single name, but hello everyone. Nice to have you guys all on board here. YouTube is lagging Facebook. In the past, it's been the other way around. Thanks for that, Tristan. It's a tricky one, that one, isn't it? We send the same stream out to both platforms, but it's kind of unpredictable which one's going to be lagging. Sometimes there's an audio delay on one of them, but we're doing our best. We're doing all we can, really. Now, Tristan, I'm glad you're there, because my next thing was going to be, I'm actually going to see if we can maybe tackle a few quick questions from previous weeks before we get into the news, because I would really like to catch up on some of these, and at least one of them was from you, Tristan. So let me just scroll down on my notes here. You remember the show notes? Everyone remembers that you can go to the description and click on the link to the show notes, so you can follow along with what we're doing here if you want to follow the links. Anyway, Tristan, oh, right, you had a question last week about what's on the monitor. Curious to know what's on the monitor to your right. Looks interesting. So I assume you're talking about this monitor just down here, right? So let's do that. Let's talk about that. So when I saw that question, I actually went and I think hooked that into our system so I can actually show you exactly what we're seeing on that monitor there. And that's what it looks like here. Now, actually, I'll just go back a step. I'll just cut out to our studio audience out here, that view there, but it's not the audience we're looking at, although they are very pleasing to the eye. We're not actually looking at them at the moment. See all the screens along the walls and stuff there. Most of those are actually interactive ones. That's not what we're talking about here, but some of the screens at the back, on the back of the wall up there and in the other room that you can't really see, we've got a whole bunch of live video and data feeds coming from various places around Earth and indeed even in space. And what you're seeing on the... Ooh, someone's calling. Someone's calling. Okay. It's not supposed to make a noise. I tell you what, hang on. We're going to get sidetracked here again. Oh, it's saying I missed your call, John. Yikes. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Drat. Let's try that again. Sorry, everyone. This is testing out. So, oh, I know what we need to do. We need to click on video. Right, John, if you're there, you need to click on the video link, I think. Oh, it's not working very well, is it? Okay, I wish it wasn't making that noise in the background. Okay, righto, I think we have, oh, John's left the call. Well, we tried our best, John. I'll tell you what, hold on for now, John, and we might get back to that later in the show, and we'll give that another blast. I did actually try this, testing it out with the folks at home, and it worked much better than it did just then. Anyway, we're going to get these things under control, honestly. But what we were talking about with these live video feeds here. So what we've got is several computers down here that are bringing in various feeds from all over the place and mixing them up, and I've done some things to present them in different ways. But what you're seeing along the top, you may recognize that one actually, the four screens along the top there. So these are each individual picture that you're seeing is being sent out to a different monitor around the Space Center here so that you can see all the different things, and there's lots more information about them around the place. So the ones at the top are actually from earth.nullschool.net, which is a really cool visualization website. We've used it here on the show before and we've talked about that. The next ones down on the second row, those are mostly solar monitors. So second row on the left, those are various views of the sun as it is right now, coming from different solar telescopes. The one just next to that one with the sort of green outline there is showing the X-rays coming from the sun at the moment, along with X-ray flux. The next one is showing the solar wind. That's coming from the stereo A and B satellites, showing the solar weather and the wind coming towards the Earth. Then we've got the Aurora monitor on the right. Next row down, we've got monitoring the NASA's Deep Space Networks that's communicating with various space probes around the solar system. Then a whole bunch of webcam feeds from Kennedy Space Center. So that, in a nutshell, is what you are looking at on the monitor just down here. That's my live feed input, mixing it all up and sending it all around the place. So I love all that kind of stuff, eh? It's really cool to keep an eye on what's going around the world and in space. So a monitor that you can't quite see down here is also bringing in the live feeds from the space station and just a couple of other things like that. So that's what that one was all about. I wonder if we should, I hope that answers your question, Tristan. What else did we have? Actually, what I wanted to say is we've got some of these questions here from previous shows, but I would really I'd prefer to answer them if those people are watching again tonight. So tell me if you are here. Jacob Fox or Leah Trass, Mike Sigley, John 1948. If any of you guys are here, just let me know in the chat and we will tackle a couple of your questions. So let's see if, yikes, I've just realised something else that's a problem with our chats tonight. I can't scroll anymore, and I think I know why that is. Drat. Okay, we'll sort that one out later as well. Okay, anyway, let's just carry on, shall we? We are going to get back to some of those questions later, but for now, shall we get on to the news? And the big news that I want to talk about first up is the fact that New Zealand is going to get to name its own planet. Now, I'll start off by pointing out that the thing about being able to name stars and planets is something that you have to be really careful of, and I've made a bit of an issue about it because I'm really not very happy with these organisations that say that you can name a star. In fact, I'll leave that whole discussion for another time. In fact, I should do a rant about it. That would make a really good rant. That'd please you guys, wouldn't it? It's time for a rant, is that these guys keep hassling me that I should be doing another rant. That would be a good one. So don't go out and buy the naming rights for a star. That's the first thing. But this one, what we're talking about tonight, hang on a sec.
John is here and...
Okay, thanks for that, Floydie. So anyway, sorry, what was I saying? So this one is from the International Astronomical Union, which is the legit outfit. So this is the organisation that does get to decide what things are named out in space. So let's have a look at this. This is a program that they are offering called Name Exoworlds. Now, it's part of the IAU, or International Astronomical Union's 100th anniversary. So it's a program that they're doing where a whole bunch of countries around the world will get to name an exoplanet, and New Zealand is one of them. So we get to name a planet. Our planet is called HD 137388b for now, but we get to give it a better name. So what's happening is that they just nominate a person in each country, and it's up to each country how we go about deciding what name we are going to give that planet. So it's suggested that you run a competition or something like that, and I imagine that that's what will happen here on Earth. So if we go and have a look on, I think I've got it here. Yeah, so this is NASA's exoplanet database there. So what we're seeing here is CGI. We don't have any actual images of the planet. It's in another solar system. It's a long way away, and you know, there's no chance of getting actual photos of it. But this is their sort of visualization of what it might look like. Now, this is a pretty cool website. I'll just full screen that actually, so you can go around and you can see what it might look like. You can have a look at the system that it is in. We won't go through all of this because it's a little bit slow loading and it does sort of take a while, but you can kind of see there's the star, there's our planet, there's New Zealand's planet orbiting around it, and we could go and have a closer look at the star. Again, it's all CGI stuff. but it's a neat system, this one. It's in the constellation of Apis. It's about 130 odd light years away from Earth. The planet that we're talking about is a small gas giant planet. It's about 1/5 of Jupiter's mass. It has a similar distance from its star as Earth does, and a similar year, of course. Now, it is actually, you can't see it with your own eye, unfortunately, when you go outside, but it is visible with a small telescope, and we're going to look at that later on when we're talking about what's in the night sky. So I'm going to show you at least where it is in the sky, even if you can't see it with your own eyes, and what you can do if you do have a telescope. Now, so there's a bunch of rules and guidelines about naming a planet. For example, it's strongly recommended that indigenous names are taken into consideration, and I suspect that they will be given preference. So I would be very surprised if this doesn't end up being a Maori name, which I think is a good idea. So we'll keep in touch with what's happening here. You can go to the website. Hang on, how do I need to exit out of here? So all these links are in the show notes, of course, so you can go to the website and learn about how the whole program works by just clicking on all these various links up there. So there you go. Let's just have a quick look in the chat. I just want to make sure that everything's going here, and because I can't scroll, I've got to be a little bit careful. Mike, you're here, and John, you are here as well. Now, John, you were the one who tried to call in. No call. Okay, then. Sorry about that. We'll get back to that another time. Okay, I'm just having a quick whiz through some of the other ones there before they disappear. Ian. Planet McPlanet Face. There was a story about Boaty McBoatface today. Did you see that? Because they actually did end up naming the little submarine Boaty McBoatface, and it's come back with a really good result on its first mission. So that was really cool. Yeah, let's see how that one goes. Planet McPlanet Face. Okay, right, let's see if we can tackle a couple of those questions, because I do want to try and catch up on some of these. So, now, Mike, the question was about the Parker Solar Probe. Sorry, that was the one that I wanted to talk about there. Now, that was also, Leah had asked about that. So let's see if Leah joins us as well tonight. In the meantime, John, there is a... Mike, there's a link in the show notes where I've got all the questions listed. There was just a couple of links there about updates about the Parker Solar Probe if you're interested in that. You probably already know about it anyway. But Leah was also asking about any updates to that. So I'll tell you what, Leah, if you are watching or if you do tune in, go and check out the links in the show notes. There are some updates. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's have a quick look at it, because I think I've got it over here. I do. So the Parker Solar Probe is this really awesome space probe they talked about it going and touching the sun. I think that's a bit of a stretch. It's not actually going to touch the sun really, but the sun's got this sort of big atmosphere that sort of comes out to become a very tenuous atmosphere. There's no sort of real surface to the sun or anything, so it's pretty hard to say when you're actually touching it. But it is getting very near the sun. Now, I better get this right. It's just completed its second close approach to the sun. And it's studying a whole bunch of stuff to do with the sun, and one of its missions at the moment is to find out why a part of the very outer atmosphere of the sun is so hot compared to stuff that's closer to the sun. So anyway, it's all there. The links are in the show notes if you want to go and find out more about that. Who was the other person that we were going... John 1948, what was your question? Right, will SLS Orion get to the moon before Starship? That's what you were asking. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Sorry about that. So, I think so. Starship, that's the SpaceX ship, but it's in really early days yet. If everything goes really well, I think the Starship, it could come together really quickly, but given that it hasn't really had anything other than tethered hold down tests yet, that rocket, and it's nowhere near its final configuration, I think that it's still quite a long way off. Now, of course, the SLS Orion, NASA's project, that's sort of behind as well, but it's certainly a lot more ahead than Starship is. So yeah, if I had to put money on it, I would say SLS Orion will get to the moon before Starship. But who knows? Who knows? SpaceX has done some amazing things in the past. Right, I think that's all the questions that we needed to tackle now. I'm just sort of thinking of time. Yeah, let's carry on, and we'll have a look at the rest of the news, and then we'll get back and cover some more of those questions shortly. So we've talked about this Parker Solar Probe. NASA has estimated that it will need $20 billion to $30 billion for the Artemis program moon landing. So the Artemis is the name of the program to get people back to the moon. Sorry, I should be saying the first woman and the next man, because every single press release, every single time you hear a NASA employee talking about this, they say that very specific phrase. NASA is getting the first woman and the next man. It's exactly those words. There's obviously been a directive that goes out that you can't say it in any other way. Anyway, so this is the program that is getting the first woman and the next man back to the moon, and NASA is suggesting that they're going to need $20 to $30 billion over the next number of years, essentially working out to $4 to $6 billion extra per year. Now that's less than what a lot of people have suggested, and it does seem on the light side to me, to be honest. I think he might be trying to soften the blow a little bit, Administrator Bridenstine, because I would be surprised if they can pull it off for that money. But we'll see. Now, NASA's budget is currently around about a bit over $20 billion per year. That's a lot of money, but they do an awful lot of stuff with it. So they're going to need to go from, well, $21.5 billion for this fiscal year, and they're looking at sort of bringing that up to the high 20s, I guess. Now, out in the audience, sorry, let's just go and have a look out there. Just get myself organised here. Yes?
Dave, do you know what President Trump's position is on NASA and what they're doing?
Honestly, I don't think President Trump knows what his position is on NASA. So he came out with this tweet. Was it just last week we talked about that? It may have been. It was within the last couple of weeks anyway, where he came out with a tweet saying NASA should not be talking about going back to the moon. We should be talking about going back to Mars, when it is in fact his official position that NASA should be talking about going to the moon. They're talking about the moon because he told them to. So honestly, who knows? It's crazy, isn't it? Look, I think, to be honest, I just don't think it's really top of mind for President Trump. I don't think he really knows much about what NASA's doing. He certainly doesn't seem to understand much about space. I'm not going to get down on him for that. Most people don't. But he should at least understand what his own policy is, you would think. So I think that he's pretty much just going along with what other people are suggesting that he do, really. Now, there was this whole thing that his administration at least, is saying that they want people on the moon. They want the first woman and the next man on the moon by 2024. And that's been a big thing, which would be President Trump's last year in office if he gets re-elected. So I suspect he would very much like that to happen, but I don't think he probably gives it a lot of thought day to day, to be honest. And I bet you he's forgotten all about his tweet from last week. So anyway, so we were talking about NASA's budget. So I just want to show you a quick graph here that shows you NASA's budget as a percentage of America's federal budget, going right back to when NASA first started. So you can see, if we go right back here, of course, the big spend obviously was in the Apollo years. So it got up to around about 4.5% of the entire federal budget, which is a big chunk of it. But it dropped off pretty quickly, even before the Apollo missions, which is around about here. It's when the Apollo missions finished. At least the moon landings, and so it sort of never really recovered, as you would expect. It came back, let's see, it came along here, it jumped back up around about here. Honestly, well, that would have been Hubble around about then. I don't know how much of this would have been to do with Hubble. Probably not much, actually, because Hubble was 1990, wasn't it, that launched, so you would think most of the spending came before that. I'm not quite sure why there was that little jump there, but anyway, it's sort of gone down ever since, and it's been hovering around about 0.5% of the federal budget. Now, I know there's this whole thing in America about how much money NASA gets. Interestingly, according to most surveys that I've come across, most people in the States are quite happy for NASA to be getting sort of around about the 1 to 2% of the federal budget, but it's only getting 0.5%, if that. But most people think that NASA also gets too much money, so people aren't really aware of how much NASA's actually getting. Most people don't think that NASA is already getting more than it actually is. So anyway, if this whole moon thing is going to go ahead, it's going to require a reasonably substantial increase in NASA's budget. And I think that is a bit of a problem, because it's hard to imagine the Democrats really being on board with it that much, given that it's supposedly one of President Trump's pet projects, And the worrying thing for me is that there has been talk about raiding funds from other federal projects, including education. And I think it's a given that the Democrats would fight that. So I'm not quite sure where the money's going to come from. Of course, we also talked last week, didn't we, about NASA doing all these commercial opportunities and inviting private astronauts up to the space station. So and that's supposed to help pay for all of this. It's not going to help that much, even at $35 million per ticket. And I'm sure there's some of you out there that are keen to do that for a mere $35 million. But even that's not anywhere near $4 to $6 billion. So it's not going to help that much. So that's where we're at with NASA budget. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the budget requests and how the Democrats react to all of this in the coming sort of months ahead. So, right, let's keep moving along because I wanted to talk about this quite cool mission. Now, this is something that has not been made yet. It's still in the early development stage. But NASA has revealed the plans to make this beautiful looking spacecraft. Now, I've got a video here. You know that we've been having this trouble with copyright issues here, and I'm going to try and sneak this video in. Now we do have permission to use this, there's no problem with that, but I'm hoping we're not going to get a copyright sting for it. Anyway, so this is just a video animation, CGI of course, because it hasn't been built yet, of how this thing deploys. It's a beautiful looking spacecraft, isn't it? So this is called Starshade. It deploys like that. The thing on the right is a telescope that's turning around to face it, but it's the idea that this thing will shade the light from a star so that you can see the things around the star. It's quite amazing, if it actually does come to pass. It's not a new idea, but it's a brilliant idea. So the idea is that you're trying to look for things like exoplanets or planets around another star, which you can't see directly because the star is too bright. So the idea is that if you position the star shade in the right place, and you've got the telescope way back here, the star shade in front of it, it will block out just enough light so you can actually see the planets and things around it. So great concept. Whoopsie. It's a long way away yet, but it's certainly something worth keeping an eye on. I thought it was just a really cool video to show because it's so beautiful. Right, I need to go faster because we're already almost halfway through the show. Right, I'm going to, let's see, I think I will briefly mention this story, and that's because it is about the Indian Space Agency. And if you've been following the show, you will know that I'm absolutely filthy on the Indian Space Agency because they blew up their own satellite a while back and added a whole bunch of space junk into orbit around Earth, not to mention the whole aggressive nature of the project. So not happy about that, and I've been keeping them out of the news as punishment. You don't get to appear on Space Dave Live after what you did. But anyway, look, we'll start sneaking them back in a little bit. This is quite an important story, I think. India is planning to launch its own space station by 2030. So there is a couple of interesting things about this. So India's plans their plans include a crewed space mission with people on it in 2022, and then eventually their own space station by 2030. And interestingly, they are talking quite strongly about not involving any other countries. They're doing this all by themselves. Excuse me, which is kind of interesting because previously the Indian Space Agency has talked a lot about working with other Asian space agencies in particular and building up the whole Asian space presence. So, but this time they're sort of really making a point of going on their own. Anyway, that's enough about them. I don't want to give them any more airtime just yet until they're out of the dog box. I've got to talk about another thing. This is from an organisation called the Planetary Society. If you haven't heard of them, you should definitely look them up. I've been a member of the Planetary Society for many years. It's just it's a sort of a public organisation. It's not governmental, it's just a bunch of space enthusiasts, and they do various work with the planets and with space, and they are planning to launch Lightsail 2. Now this is a solar sail. You may have come across this concept before, it's certainly not a new one, and indeed the Planetary Society has previously launched a test version of this, but this is the well, I guess it's actually their third attempt. The first one failed, the second one was a success. Now they're planning to launch another one, Lightsail 2, and I just better look at my notes here because I want to get the launch date right. So the launch window opens on the 24th of June, so it's coming up pretty soon. It's going to be launched on a SpaceX Falcon 9, I believe. Now the actual satellite here, let's just go and scroll down a bit actually. So if we go down and, oh look, they've even got a countdown there. So it's almost 6 days away. So keep an eye on that. The link's in the show notes, of course. Bill Nye there, who, you like to see president? of the Planetary Society. I'm not sure his exact title. Sorry about that. I should certainly know that. But anyway, he's got a video there explaining how it works. And if we just go down here, we can see that that's actually the satellite there. It's a pretty small thing, and it was built by a bunch of students from Georgia Tech. So that's pretty neat. So it goes up like that, and then when it deploys this huge solar sail. Well, it's not actually that huge. Where's its? Oh, you can see its dimensions there. So yeah, it deploys its solar sail, and the whole point is that when it's deployed, the sail actually, it's not like a sail here on Earth. Well, it's similar. It's using photons from the sun. So it's using light. The momentum from the light actually pushes on the sail and can actually propel the spacecraft forward. So it's an old idea. It doesn't give you much propulsion at all. You're not going to move very fast, but the idea with this test is that it will be testing out a way of moving around CubeSats, or very small satellites in Earth orbit. So I think it's a really neat idea. It's got lots of potential all around the solar system. I have one reservation, and that is that if this does turn out to be a viable way of moving around satellites in Earth orbit, I think you might know where this is going if you've been watching the show for a few weeks. These things are quite reflective. And if we're going to have the whole bunch of these in orbit, then that's going to be adding to the problem that we've been talking about, which goes back to the blimmin' Pepsi sign. I shouldn't have said that. That's made me angry even thinking about the Pepsi sign. But, you know, the whole thing with SpaceX's satellites that are, there's all this discussion about how bad it's going to affect the night sky. So I am a little bit worried about if this actually does work, whether we really want a whole bunch of these things. Because remember, the satellite itself is only going to be a tiny little thing, and then you've got this massive reflective thing going with it. So I don't know, I still think it's got an awful lot of potential, and I wish the Planetary Society all the best because it's a great organisation and well worth supporting. So that is the Planetary Society's mission. Right, I'm sort of thinking that I do want to allow time tonight for lots of questions, so I actually think we're okay on time. We will go through these last couple of stories. You remember when I told you about the LEGO ISS, and I wanted everyone to go and enter this competition because they were suggesting, or these are fan suggested new sets for LEGO, and one of them is a set for the International Space Station. So I encouraged everyone to go and vote for the ISS. Thank you very much for doing that, because we won. They are actually going to make the LEGO model of the ISS. It's not a huge model. It would have been nice if it had been a bit bigger maybe, but at the same time I guess that makes it more affordable. And there's a whole bunch of other new LEGO stuff that's just coming out. So I love LEGO, as everyone knows. We've got a cool LEGO display down the back here. So thank you everyone who voted for that. Right, this next story is about Mars. NASA's which one is it? It's their HiRISE instrument anyway, has been orbiting Mars and has got this really cool photo. Actually, I've got a better photo of it over here. Let me show you this one. It's a wider view and shows you the whole thing. This is some interesting features on Mars, and of course, as everyone has pointed out, these look very much like the Star Trek logo that you can see there. There's a whole bunch of Star Trek logos or emblems on Mars. It's a fascinating feature. What's happening here? Now, I'm not a geologist, but what's happened here is that in the distant past, this was all just sand dunes around here, and these features around here were sort of crescent-shaped sand dunes. Then there was a nearby volcanic eruption, and this whole area around here was covered in volcanic lava. But these dunes were above where the lava was. So the lava was all around them, the dunes was kind of sticking above it. And then the lava all solidified, and then over time, the sand dunes eroded away and left these interesting looking features on there. So there you go, that's one for all you Star Trek fans out there, and as you know, I'm one of you because I really like Star Trek. Right, there's one website that I want to show you. Let's have a look at this. Now we're coming up to the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landings. So as part of that, there's a website here that has recreated sort of a real-time sort of follow along with the Apollo 11 mission. So links in the show notes. If you go and have a look at it, what you can do is you can actually follow it actually in real time, either what it would be now 50 years ago, or you can just join the mission at T-1 minute or 1 minute before launch. So let's just click on that. This is an awesome website. So you can see here they've got video, still images, and a whole bunch of other data that goes with it. So actually we should have some sound on this. So you can sort of hear it in the background there. There's several different communication feeds going on there. You can see the transcripts on the right. You can sort of scroll through it and see everything that everyone is saying pretty much. And it cuts to all the different views, and you've got a timeline along the top there, so you can jump to different parts of the mission, and it's really, really cool. They've done a fantastic job of this. I definitely strongly recommend that you go and have a look at it. I've got to remember how to pause it now. We'll just pause that there. So there you go, get in the mood for celebrating the Apollo 11 first landing on the moon. Okay, I think that is actually, let's have a look at our time. Yes, that's probably all the main news that I want to talk about there. We need to talk about what is happening in the night sky. So let's go over and have a look at Stellarium, our planetarium software that you should all have downloaded by now. You can get it both for the desktop and mobile. The desktop version is free. You have to pay a couple of dollars for the mobile version, but it's well worth having. Now, do you remember last week I said that if you look out tonight towards the northwest, you're going to see Mercury and Mercury and Mars very close to each other. But I said you had to do it before the show started. So if you're thinking I'll quickly run outside and do that now, you're too late. You missed it. You should have remembered from last week. So if you look on our time down here, this was actually around about 6 o'clock. So I went out and had a look, and it did look really nice. Let me know if anyone else went out there and had a look and managed to catch that. You could see them both with the naked eye. It looked quite good through binoculars as well. But what we want to do is, let's see, so actually I should just go through and just talk about a few things as we do this sort of stuff, just to let you know what I'm doing. So when I click on that button down there, that takes us right to the current time, what we're looking at right now. But this is our time and date window up here. We actually want to go around and have a quick look in the morning. Let's just quickly talk about that first actually. We'll just go around about there and let us go through till around about 6 o'clock, or maybe a bit earlier. Oh, whoopsie, sorry. Yeah, 6 o'clock or a bit earlier ideally, around about there, and we are looking for Matariki. So we've already talked about this. We will just do a quick recap. Get up in the morning, go out around about this time, look towards the east where the sun's going to come up, find Orion over here. Most people know it as the pot, so you find that. You go over to the left till you find this triangular group of stars, that is Taurus. And over here is Matariki, which in Western astronomy is actually part of the constellation of Taurus. But this is what you're looking for here, the small, beautiful star cluster Matariki. So just a reminder, none of the individual stars are particularly bright there, so you're not looking for bright stars, you're looking for a whole group of stars in a very small area. So we will talk more about Matariki probably in coming weeks, but I do want to mention one quick thing actually. And that is a guy who I've talked about a lot before on this show and in general, and his name is Professor Rangi Matamua, and he is the foremost expert on Maori astronomy. And if you want to follow him, you should definitely go and check him out on Facebook. He does a thing called Living by the Stars. So the link's in the show notes, or just Google him, Facebook him, look him up on Facebook, and he's got a whole bunch of really fascinating podcasts, and there's a group there that you can participate in. So if you're interested in Matariki or Maori astronomy in general, definitely he's the guy to go and follow, because there's a lot of misinformation about Maori astronomy, but Rangi knows his stuff. So that is that, but let's go back to Stellarium. So what we'll do is we'll go back to now. The other thing that I wanted to talk about in the night sky is, of course, let's just go around here, that constellation that we were talking about before with New Zealand Star in it. Now, it's in the south, so the IAU realised obviously that you want to be able to see the star from the country that you're getting to name that planet. So from New Zealand, it's actually sort of towards the south. It's up relatively near the Southern Cross. There's the Southern Cross up there with the 2 pointers. Now the constellation, let's have a look at that. If we go down to our bar down here, we can show the lines of the constellations. That brings them up, and the next button along shows their names. And it is this little wee constellation called Apis in here. So it's a little bit down from the Southern Cross at the moment, and there's not a lot to this constellation. It's just a few fairly dim stars, so it's definitely not something that would stand out in the night sky at all. You really got to know it to know what you're looking for. Now, I'm just going to take those constellation things off and just show you what happens over time, because as we've talked about before, this part of the sky is rotating. So although right now this is where you would be looking for it if you go outside, as the night goes on and at different times of the year, everything is rotating all the time in this area of the sky. So it may look different, well, it will look different at different times. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like later on tonight. So let's just go back to now and go and have a look in it. So again, these are the constellation of Apis in here. Now you can't see New Zealand's star with it's the planet. We're getting to name a planet around a particular star. Obviously there's no chance of seeing the planet itself, but the star is also very difficult to see. You can't see it with the naked eye. I went out last night and tried to have a look at it with my binoculars, but the moon was already up, so that kind of killed it. But it is, actually I'll tell you what, I'll show you how to find it exactly. If we go back, I'm just going to go and grab the name of it. What did I say? Yeah, here it is. So this is how you find a particular star in Stellarium. So come back over here. We need to find our search window. Then you just enter the name of whatever object you're looking for and you search for it and it will show it to you there. So that's the one that we're looking at right there, and you can see it's a very faint star. So if you're looking at this with your own eyes, the constellation that we're looking for, you can sort of see these main stars here in it. That's all you can really see with the naked eye. So when you look at it through binoculars, I went and had a look at it with my 10 by 50 binoculars, and that gives you a field of view sort of like that. You can just see these stars all together, and it's pretty challenging to see the star really. So something for amateur astronomers, if you've had a bit of experience, it won't be too hard for you. For anyone else, you might need someone to help you find it. I think really it's going to be a pretty challenging star to find. But there you go, there's a planet orbiting around that star there. That's going to be New Zealand's planet, which I think is pretty cool. I haven't seen anything about it in the news yet. Has anyone else seen anything about this? I'm surprised that it hasn't been in the news. None of you guys out there have seen anything about it? Nah. So a bit of an odd one really. I'm kind of hoping that someone's going to pick up on it. We should do it. Yeah, we should get onto the news organisations and see what's going on. Right, so I'm just having a quick look at the chats again. Now, again, I'm sorry I can't actually scroll, so anything that's already happened, I'm going to have missed it. Sorry about that, but let's have a quick look through here. Caitlin, have you seen the video of Bill Nye talking about global warming? Yes, we actually talked about that on the show. I brought it up when it first came out, and I said, I better not show you this video because Bill Nye is very angry, and I was stunned. It was amazing, eh? Because if you've been following Bill Nye, he's very family friendly, really, and it was just to see him dropping the F-bomb and being so angry was really quite something. So if you haven't seen that, go and Google Bill Nye swearing about climate change or something like that. You'll find it. It's a good short video. The Lego lunar module, Andy, yeah, that's one of the ones that I want. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? It's just an amazing looking one. Righto, so thank you for all of the thank you for all of the other comments there on YouTube, on Facebook. I'll just have a quick whiz down through here. Maui, that's not a bad suggestion, eh, Tristan? That's a good one. I still like Planet McPlanet Face. But yeah, I don't see that one. Planet Kiwi? Yeah, could be. Okay. Planet Tip Top, Stephanie. Planet Tip Top. Okay. Righto. The moon looks amazing tonight. Space Force. This is cool video. Yep, it is awesome. Thank you very much for all of those comments there. So I think that was all we needed to look at with what's happening in the night sky tonight, wasn't it? So yes, I think that was everything there. So we are actually ready to tackle some other questions. Now, I'm just thinking, sorry, let's just go back to the chats again, because I was thinking there was someone in here that I'd noticed that there was a question from them last week that we hadn't tackled. Look, I tell you what, maybe fire ahead if you've got any other questions now, because I want to obviously answer questions that we have got where the people are actually watching. So in the meantime, let's go back and answer some of these other questions, shall we? So Tristan, you had something, we talked about your thing back there. Tristan, you're still with us, and you had another question about telescopes, wasn't it? Where is it? Telescopes, tips and tricks, cool things to observe, especially for kids. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So the tips and tricks for using a telescope, the first thing is definitely, without a doubt, get to know the night sky as well as you can, because using a telescope, it's really not about buying a telescope, reading the instructions and going out and pointing at things and starting to discover new comets or seeing all these amazing things. You actually really do want to know at least something about the night sky, and I would suggest that you start off with 1 or 2 simple constellations, and I reckon the Southern Cross is a very good place to start. In fact, if we go back over, I've still got Stellarium open over here. So the Southern Cross is over there. If you're in any way interested in the night sky and you're in New Zealand, you definitely want to be knowing where the Southern Cross is, how to find it, how it moves around in that circle through the night and through the year. And there are actually quite a few interesting things to have a look at near the Southern Cross. So yeah, that would be definitely a good place to start. In fact, if we zoom in all the way into the Southern Cross, you'll know that I'm a big fan of binoculars. I think binoculars are a really good way to get to know the night sky. And here's an example for that actually. So if we look at the Southern Cross from out here a bit further, that's more or less what you would see with your own eyes. If I zoom in sort of around about that far, that's more what you would see with a pair of binoculars. Actually, I've got them right here. I'll just show you, because I was just using them before. That's the, this is my favorite pair of binoculars. I should do a little plug, eh? We sell these in the shop. Awesome value, $120. And that's sort of about the size that I'm talking about. Nice and light, nice and easy to use. And I reckon that's a really, really good way to get started with the night sky, but also keep using them. I went out tonight to look at the night sky. I didn't take my telescope out. I didn't have time. So I took my binoculars. So that would be a big tip with telescope viewing, is get a pair of binoculars. Even when I'm outside with my telescope, I still use my binoculars. So if we're looking at the Southern Cross there, that's kind of the field of view that you're going to get with the Southern Cross, with your binoculars. So it's not showing you any particular detail, but it's giving you the context. And so I can see, looking at this image here, a whole lot of stars that I can't see with my naked eye. It looks very different. If I just showed you this picture without any context, it would be hard to know what it is. It doesn't look like the Southern Cross anymore. So when you're looking through your binoculars, that's a good way of starting to get used to this idea that when you're looking through some optical instrument, it looks completely different. And it's really confusing at first. So this is a good way to get started. When you're going straight to a telescope, you're going to be seeing a view much more like this, that doesn't really look anything at all like it. It's really hard to try and jump straight from the naked eye view to something like this. That group of stars, by the way, is called the Jewel Box. And it's a beautiful group of stars, lots of different colors there. It's one of the few places in the sky where you can actually see different colored stars all in a very small space. So my first suggestion would be start with the Southern Cross, get a pair of binoculars and practice looking at that whole region through the binoculars and getting to know where everything is. So you can see the main stars, you can see the other ones there, you can figure out where the jewel box is in there. So then when you go to look at it through your telescope, you can sort of make the next step. So instead of going from the naked eye view right to the very narrow field of view, you sort of go halfway in between and keep practicing it. So the jewel box is definitely a good one for amateur astronomers to start with. You can sort of find it fairly easily because it's fairly near one of the stars in the Southern Cross there. So you can find it there, and that's definitely a good target. So go out there, check out the Southern Cross, use some binoculars and use your telescope. Now perhaps we should go back a step with the telescope. When you're first getting started with the telescope, it's not easy, is it? I'm sure heaps of you out there have had this problem. You get a nice new telescope and you're all excited and you go outside and you try and line it up, and then a couple of hours later you pack it up and come inside all dejected because you couldn't make it work. Don't worry, don't be disillusioned, and that would perhaps be one of my next tips, is don't be discouraged. Accept defeat, it happens. Don't be too put off by it and just sort of keep going, because everyone does have that trouble. So what else can I say about that? Yeah, the moon was another thing I was going to say. When you're getting started, the moon, for fairly obvious reasons, is a good target to start with because it's so much easier to find. It's not really a good idea to be looking at the full moon through a telescope because it's just too bright and you don't really see any of the detail. So I tell you what, let's actually, should we go back to Stellarium over here, because we have actually got the moon in view over there. Oh, it was very near Saturn, isn't it, actually? Quite near Saturn. We were talking about that as well. But the moon's just coming up now, so that's going to kill everything else. But when it's like this, what's happening is that you're not really seeing that much detail. If you can imagine that when you've got a proper full moon, you've got the Earth here, the moon over there, and the sun's right behind you. That's why you're seeing a full moon. The sun's behind you and it's lighting up the whole face of the moon. So you're not really seeing any shadows on the moon. That's not a great time to be looking at it because you get to see the details on the moon through the shadows. What you want is the sun to be out to the side there, shining on half of the moon that we can see from here. So there's lots of shadows and detail. So that's a good time to be looking at the moon. However, for practicing with your telescope and getting up and running, just go out there anytime because, as I say, it's the easiest thing to find. So there you go. That's probably enough about that. That's a few tips and tricks about getting started with a telescope. Everyone joined in the... Oh, sorry, I haven't been keeping an eye on the Google Hangout. Should we give that another go? Testing. John, you've been doing a good job there trying to test. Now, maybe, John, if you could tell me, have you actually... Look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and give you a ring, John. See if it's going to work. Sorry about that sound. That's not supposed to be there. Let's see if I can fix that. Maybe not. I told it to not ring me when it was trying to call. Okay, look, never mind, we'll flag that. We'll give it another go sometime. Sorry about that, everyone. I knew it was a bit ambitious trying to do that tonight. Right, Kiwi, we've got at least one more suggestion for Planet Kiwi. I wonder if it would come to that. Yeah, we'll see. Righto. Okay, I think we've still covered everything that's in the chat there, and we've still got a few minutes to go, so let's see if we can tackle any more questions. Just excuse me for just a moment while I have a quick drink. Righto. Mischief, are you in the chat tonight, Mischief? I don't think I've seen you there tonight. I want to find someone that is actually with us tonight before we talk about anything else. Ian, you want some space jokes and funny stories. I didn't get any together in time. Sorry about that. I must do that. That's a good idea. Now, Janet, you're with us tonight, aren't you? You had a question. What is a falling star? Why does it fall? And are any pieces found on Earth? So let me just double check that, Janet. Yes, you are. Hopefully you're still with us, Janet. So a falling star or a shooting star is a meteor. That's what it's all about. So it's just a little rock. It's actually usually tiny. Most meteors are very, very small, much smaller than you would think. So it's something like this that is just floating around and around in space, and it comes up to the Earth and it hits the Earth's atmosphere, and it essentially burns up in the Earth's atmosphere. So that's what you're seeing when you see a shooting star or a meteor. So if we want to be technical about it, while that thing is still floating around doing its own thing in space, it's referred to as a meteoroid, like a very, very small asteroid. A meteoroid, when it hits the Earth's atmosphere, it is called a meteor. If it does make it all the way down to the ground, it then is called a meteorite. So that's, I think that essentially answers your question, actually. Why does it fall? Yeah, basically it's just floating around and it hits the atmosphere. So it's nothing to do with stars. So it's just a little piece of rock. It couldn't really be more different from an actual star. Like many things in astronomy, it was given its name before people really fully understood what it was. So, and are any pieces found on Earth? Absolutely. So every time you come across a meteorite, that is the leftover of a falling star, shooting star, as when it did hit the Earth. So there you go. I think that, there was something else I was going to say about that. Now I can't remember what it was. Oh, I know what it was. When you see a shooting star, a couple of things actually. You can see shooting stars on any clear night. Go outside and just be patient, spend a bit of time looking up at the night sky, get yourself comfortable and warm, and you will see one, I don't know, maybe on average every 20 minutes or something like that. They're there out there all the time, so it's really worth looking up. When you're seeing a meteor shower, then you can see them maybe once every minute or so. I don't know if it's really that worth going out for a meteor shower because they're usually at not great hours. They're usually in the early hours of the morning. But anyway, the other thing that I was just quickly going to mention is that not everything that looks like a shooting star is actually a meteor. Some of them may be something burning up in the Earth's atmosphere that was human-made. There was that really impressive Russian one that came down a little while ago that everyone talked about and I missed. And it gutted me. About 2 weeks afterwards, I was dealing with all of these calls. Did you see it? Did you see it? No, I didn't. I was very sad. The one other thing that it could be is astronaut poo. So on the space station, They recycle all their urine, but they don't recycle their solid waste. We don't currently have any way to recycle that. So what they do is they put it in a big container outside the space station so it doesn't stink out the inside of the space station, and then when it's all full, they fire it back down towards the Earth and it burns up in the Earth's atmosphere. So next time you're going outside and you're looking back and you're seeing those beautiful romantic shooting stars, they might not all be shooting stars. They may be something else. So sorry if I've spoiled the romance of that for you, but it is what it is. So anyway, that's probably enough about the meteors for now. Right, we're getting near the end of our show, so we need to think about our competition, don't we? How are we going out there? Floyd, do you think that we've got all our competition entries ready?
Yeah.
You have? Are we ready to do the draw?
Yeah.
Okay then. Tell you what, we'll leave you to organise that for just a sec, and we'll do the draw in just a minute. In the meantime, I'm just going to go back to the chat, and that's really frustrating me that I can't scroll there. Sorry about that, guys. I really stuffed that one up. I was making some tweaks to it in the week. Harry mentions that Jupiter and Saturn have been great the last few days as well. Yes, and we did kind of see that on Stellarium before, didn't we? Making a beautiful sight there. So we went for quite a while without seeing any planets in our evening sky, but now it's all back on again. So you definitely want to get out there and see if you can see Jupiter and Saturn. So if we just go over to Stellarium, actually, that is what they are looking like right now. So really, really nice. Thanks for that, Harry. Is there anything else?
What about your neat star cup, Dave? Wendy Bellhouse. Tell us about your neat star cup.
Your neat star cup, Dave. Oh, okay. Thank you, Wendy. Was that? Oh, that was this, was it? Is that what you're talking about? I guess it must be. That would be my neat star cup, wouldn't it? We sell these in our shop, actually. Now, this is one of those heat-changing ones where, unfortunately, this isn't a good example of it, Wendy. It's supposed to start off nice and dark and you can just see some of the stars, but when you pour hot water into it, it changes. You've come across these cups before, Ray, and then it shows you all the constellations. Unfortunately, that effect doesn't last forever. I found that this one lasted a couple of years, and now it's just like this all the time. So this is supposed to be when it is full of hot water. My coffee's gone a bit cold, unfortunately, but so this is what it looks like hot. When you buy it new, you just see some of the stars on it. But these are really, really cool mugs. So this is my favourite mug, and it gets thrashed. So I say it's lasted a couple of years, but boy, it's had a hard life in those couple of years. So yeah, and it's a really great gift. And I think, once the effect does finally run out, it's still a cool cup. The only thing with these things is never ever put them in the dishwasher, not even once. Yep. So just you have to hand wash them. If you want to buy one, let me know. Now, thanks, guys. It's good to have you keeping an eye on these chats, because I seem to miss them a lot. Iona, you've got one of those cups. They're cool, aren't they? Let's have a quick look up there. I think I've got all them. Jupiter and Saturn. Yep. John, 1948, mentioned that dense object detected under the surface of the rear of the moon. Thanks for that, John. I was thinking that maybe we might have got that in tonight, but I just didn't get time to have a look at it. But if anyone's interested, they have found something that appears to be a very dense object, a subsurface on the moon. I think it was under an impact crater, wasn't it? Look, honestly, John, I don't really know much about it. I just didn't have time to look into it, but I think they're suspecting that it was from an impact, and it's now underground on the moon. Maybe we might get back to that one next week. Wendy, you love your Star Cup too. Good on you. They're cool cups, aren't they? Unfortunately, we also used to have a periodic table of the elements mug, but our suppliers stopped making them, so we're just down to the constellation ones now. So anyway, yeah, let me know if you want to buy one of them. I'd love to sell you one of them. So I think we are just about the end of our show. So we are ready to do our draw, Floyd, are we? So bring the astronaut helmet up the front, and we will find someone to do the draw for us. Who wants to do the draw tonight? Any volunteers? Thank you, Alan.
None of us have entered.
None of you have entered, thank you. If you don't know what that reference was, we had a couple of scandals here where people in the audience kept winning the prize, or their family members or whatever, so we should actually rule you guys out altogether. Right. Okay, it was no one here. It was Stephanie Pippa Kent. Thank you, Stephanie. So you've been watching the show for a bit. What you need to do, Stephanie, is just send us a private message or something and let us know where to post that out to, and we will get that in the mail as soon as possible. When I say as soon as possible, I don't mean tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, because honestly it does take me a little while to get to the post office, and I'm sorry Esther, I still haven't sent your prize out from last week. I'm really sorry about that, but I'm hoping to get onto that tomorrow. So I think let's just have one quick last look at the chat. Oh John, you're going to give another call. Okay, look, I think we might actually be out of time for that. Like, oh, hang on. Oh, no, he's calling again. Let's give it another try. Just bear with us, everyone. We'll see if we can make this work. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Now, John, if you've got your webcam, a video camera set up, you need to make sure you click the video thing. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to connect to you here. I'm just going to turn your sound up a little bit because we really want to get this going. We want to get this going. We want people to be able to call in by video, and obviously we do want to get some guests on here. Now I think I might be able to hear you, John. Are you there?
Congratulations, Stephanie!
There you go. Congratulations, Stephanie. John is saying. Thank you very much, John. So I think what's happened there? We've gone back to me. Hang on. Sorry. I'm still getting my act together here. This was what we were trying to look at, but it's all gone a bit crazy on me. So thank you, John. I think that was... Are you still there, John? No, I think John has left the call. Okay, well, we will call that some progress. Okay, we're going to keep working on that one. I'll do a couple more tests as soon as I get time. But of course, the hard thing with this is that you really can't test it properly until you're actually live. So thank you for bearing with me for that one. We will get that under control because I'm really looking forward to having people call in. I should have asked you guys now if anyone else is keen to call in via video chat just to see if this really is worth doing. But I think it's worth doing. In any case, we need to do it to have guests on the show. So look, with that, we are now at 8 o'clock. So I think I'm going to say thank you very much to our studio audience for braving the bitter cold and being with us tonight. Thank you, Floyd, for helping out. As always, a great job back there. So from me and for all of us in the live audience, we will say good night to you, and we'll see you back again next week. Bye-bye.